I have quit every creative hobby I've ever had, and it's something I'm trying to figure out why I do that. I'm someone who loves to be creative. I love to make things. I love the act of creation, but there's always a point. There's always a point in my journey when I'm learning something new that I just stop. Something blocks me from wanting to follow it through the whole way. When I was younger, I used to be into a lot of different things. I did musical theatre, I did photography, I've made short films. I would learn everything I could about each thing. I would get into the really technical parts of each hobby, trying to perfect it. But I always got to a point. It was that point where you've learned all the theory, you've learned the technical stuff, and then the next step is taking a leap of faith. It's taking everything you've learnt and then putting it into practice and actually making something that comes from you. I think the vulnerability of creating something I was personally invested in emotionally really scares me, and it stopped me every single time. So with musical theatre, it was being vulnerable and, trying to really commit to being a performer, which I couldn't really do. I could never really back myself that much to be like, I can do this. And I think I have the grit to take on being in the performing arts industry. I just could never do it. I could never fully send it that way. With photography, I couldn't charge people for photos. I just liked making the photos. I didn't like turning it into a business to make money. And I always found it was I liked taking portraits of people just because I liked seeing how they would come out in a nice portrait. That's it. And giving them a nice image. When I was doing photography, I did charge for a few shoots, but it never got to a point where I fully backed myself and made a photography business or went into, editorial work or high level creative work. So that's where I stopped with that. And then with my filmmaking, which is probably the last thing that I really put a lot into. I went to film school, I created 3 short films, but I think there was a point I was applying for all these different initiatives for writing and documentaries. I just felt like this huge wall, I couldn't get past, I couldn't break in. And I know the film industry is not an easy thing to break into. And I think it got to a point where I just didn't have any direction. I just didn't know what I was doing it all for. And then I stopped. And that's always the case. I just stop every time. And I retreat. I think when I get to that point, I stop and I there's a fear of taking that leap into the unknown of pushing yourself into a creative field. And I would always retreat back into a 9-to-5 job, the safe option. And I've been there ever since. And what I'm getting at is, it is scary. It's the saying where you put your heart on your sleeve, just to put it all out there and put the vulnerability out there. It's really scary. I think another part is the fear of judgment. It's just early on, you're always chasing the validation, the external validation of people saying, oh, you pick things up so great. Oh, that looks awesome. What do you mean you've only been doing this for a few months? And you get a lot of motivation off that. But it gets to a point where the external validation runs out, and then it gets to the day-to-day grind. And I think for me, the grind is the hardest part. I wasn't a naturally hard worker. I think things came to me really easy during school because I was really curious about a whole bunch of different things, and I would always want to try something new. But once it got past that, that new stage, that novelty stage, just drops off. And I think I'm only now realizing that it's the showing up every day, little by little, piece by piece, that is the difference. And that's how you master the craft, or a craft. And also, it's more about slowly building things rather than trying to just pump it out really quickly. Yeah, I've been trying to do that, where I work on all my different things that I want to improve, little by little each day. And it's definitely harder to get through the motivation moments, you know, trying to motivate yourself to do them over and over again each day. I think a good comparison for me was earlier this year. For the last 2 years, I've been on a bit of a fitness journey. And I think it's actually taught me the discipline that the creative arts never really did. I said to myself, I'm only going to focus on my physical well-being for a little bit. You know, completely take expectations about being a creative or doing creative projects and just focus on my physical health and improving my physical ability. And I think the discipline of doing that every day is like, you know, getting your workouts in, you know, making sure you're eating properly, making sure you're sleeping properly. All of those habits and that process of, you know, looking after myself has taught me what I need to do for my creative work. And I think it's taught me more than just how to look after myself. It's taught me how to show up every day, little by little, working towards a bigger goal. Yeah, it's been really good. And I think I've been slowly doing these little exercises on my personal social media where I do like funny videos or like funny lip syncing videos. I'm trying to get through this cringe stage of just like let my creativity like have a chance rather than shooting it down every 2 seconds. But yeah, I think creativity is hard. I'm sad that I'm not as creative as I used to be. I'm not as, you know, brave as I used to be when I was younger. But I think having the discipline that I've learned recently will be really, really good for me. I think it's the only way I'm ever going to get anything creative done instead of that kind of burst energy that I used to do with my earlier projects. I think also there's a bit of a regret and sadness when you do creative things when you're younger, because I really thought I was going to be in the creative industry, whether it was photography, filmmaking, even musical theatre. I really thought that was my path. And now that it hasn't happened that way, I do still do creative things with my 9 to 5, but the fact that I'm not in those really, really creative fields makes me quite sad. I have a little bit of a regret about that, and I always look at people who were doing the same things when I was doing them, but they're really established now, and I do feel that sense of regret. And like, what if I did keep going, and what if I stuck to it, you know? What if I really backed myself back then? But then I think I put a lot of pressure on myself when I was younger to succeed really quickly, and when it didn't work out, really, really cut me down. I do always kind of think of what would have happened if I just stuck to my guns and kept doing, particularly filmmaking. I feel like I could have done a lot more than what I've done now. But I guess for now, I think the way I approach creativity is a real mindful approach. It's more like doing the reps I need. So writing every day, drawing every day, thinking every day about what I can come up with and what I can do. I think just putting in the work is something I'm happy to do for now, instead of putting all these expectations. So it's been good to take a step back and really refocus about what I want out of this. I think the discipline aspect is going to be good because it's a different way to approach it. I used to be quite all over the place, like ideas coming from everywhere, no energy one day and then all the energy another day. Like you'd go from doing nothing one weekend and then you'd do like 2 16-hour days. That's probably a lot, but like on these short film sets, and you'd just be running on absolute fumes, and then the next day you would just have nothing. So it's nice to have a little bit more balance, a bit more a more healthy approach to creativity. I think the main thing I've learned over the years about being, you know, severely creatively blocked in most of my endeavors is it's okay to stop for a little bit and refocus. It's okay to take a break, and it's okay to not want to do it anymore. But there's always one thing about creative projects. They always draw me back in. I mean, this YouTube channel is a really good example of me finding another outlet for this creative energy. So yeah, I think nobody's journey is the same, and I think we should band together and support each other in our creative journeys. Yeah, I think that would be nice. I think there's definitely a whole bunch of, creatively blocked people who gave up a lot of their fun creative pursuits from their 20s. I feel like it's time for us to all revisit them in a slow, healthy way, in a way that is manageable and fulfills us like it used to. Tell me in the comments below, what have you recently done that's sparked your creativity? I would really love to know. I will share one really fun thing that happened recently that sparked my creativity. I became a dungeon master for a D&D game that I ran in my friendship circle. It was a fun way to re-engage with the storytelling process, and I had so much fun, and it made me have some realizations about story and structure, because when you see it play out with people and people using characters, it's quite interesting. But I just thought that was a great way to kind of reignite my storytelling fire, I guess. And I'm really grateful. So if D&D is your thing, I highly recommend it. And if you are a storyteller, try and be a dungeon master. It's the opportunity to create your own stories for your players. But yeah, I feel like I don't have anything else to say. I just want to close by saying this. I did quit every creative hobby I've ever had, but I found my way back, and you will too.